I mean, obviously there's no walkway, but they got away with it there. That was definitely sports-led, a la Americana. And I was a mature student in the Metropolitan University on Holloway Road. And you could see it must have been the same 24 hours, that man said there. You could see it going up and up, just, you know, come around, if you missed 2 days in the college, it was. And so I'd like to know, I mean, from the professor's point of view, was any study done on that? Because it's obviously very relevant, not being far away.
So the question on the Arsenal development, the person who supervised my thesis, my PhD, is a chap called Dr. Jeff Waters, and he did, if you wait until the end, I can try and look at some sort of reference for you, and he did his thesis on the development of the Arsenal Stadium. They, being in Islington, and Islington perhaps being a bit wiser to the value of property in that borough, they have, as far as my understanding goes, they did pay a Section 106 contribution for something up to 60 million. It may not have reached that amount, and a lot of that was to do away with the recycling plant, I think, which was nearby to the stadium, and to remove that and to reposition it elsewhere. And they didn't end up doing anything to Holloway Road Station, which was part of the original plans, I think, which was to relieve the congestion which is caused in that area. Will obviously is still a major issue. It's going to be a major issue for Tottenham, for the football club. Anybody who goes to games there, Tottenham supporters, will know that, you know, with the capacity of as it is at the moment, something like 41,000, it's very difficult to get people in and out of the area. And I know that there's talk of revamped train services. It's the proof of the pudding will be in the eating. But certainly there are other studies on Arsenal.
Actually, I used to work, you know where they've got the stadium, I used to work in the post office, the sorting office there, Queensland Road, and that was demolished to build the new stadium, I think. For 6 years I worked as a postman in Islington, so I know the area quite well. But I want to say that, I think lots of these major developments, sports-led developments, have the same problems, but also it's not just sports-led development. Developers are getting increasingly confident that they can build bigger and bigger developments. That they're less and less about what the community needs. They're about luxury housing, corporate malls, and anything that can make maximum profits. So, and it's happening all over London. It's not just massive development, but there's lots of smaller ones that are just the same problems. They're not developing London in a way that is for the benefit of the people that live here. So we have to get organised in every community, in every borough in London, to assert our rights. We have to have strong residents groups and campaign groups and networks. And there is actually a London-wide network called Just Space, and they have regular conferences. They have different kind of campaign groups and residents groups from all over London attending. So we're trying to build up a London-wide kind of movement of opposition to this kind of top-down obnoxious development, of which Spurs is just a particularly bad example. So.
I just live on the other side of Haringey. I mean, perhaps you might give some indication of how we might vote, but that's a side question. I don't know, with the comparison, from your experience with both Arsenal and Spurs, that you couldn't make some sort of comparison, and my limited knowledge would put Arsenal way ahead of Spurs historically, and Spurs' dissociation from the community as a sort of send the supporters along and let them spend the money. But I mean, you may know that more. Okay, so that's on history, and I think that sort of comparison would be a good thing to do, and maybe come out with a lack of trust in the first place in Spurs to do anything that might be that useful. The second minor thing is you were talking about sort of money making or something, you know. I wonder whether the sports clubs of present are not there just to make a big loss, which they will leave on. Some people will make a lot of money, like say Manchester United owners will make a lot of money. The owners at West Ham will probably make a lot of money, and we will leave the clubs themselves with a hell of a lot of debt. So it's just a bit careful about, you know, let's hope that Spurs makes money, because that needs a little bit more investigation as to who is going to make the money doing what. Yeah?
Okay.
Anyway, sorry about those people.
No, that's okay.
Maybe sort of trying to summarise those. I think most clubs, in terms of the money coming into football now, I think that, you know, over the last few years there's been so much money coming in from TV revenue that what we saw previously was a lot of clubs, quite a few clubs going out of business and overreaching themselves. Certainly in the Premier League now, a lot of clubs are declaring profits, and it's just how much profit. Yeah, then you need to look at the books to see where that's going. Obviously Daniel Levy last year awarded himself a considerable increase. He's now paying himself £6 million a year. I'm sure he's worth that. And other CEOs at other football clubs are doing something similar. In terms of their contribution to the community, a lot of football clubs have basically, unfortunately, in my view, perhaps outsourced their corporate social responsibility, in that they have charitable foundations which themselves rely on government money or local authority money to fund what they do. That's not to say they don't do good work going into, you know, council estates and other difficult areas, but they use that in their planning requests and say, look, you know, we don't really need to put more money in. We're already putting 4 million into the community through our local foundation, through our foundation, and so they use it, you know, strategically.
Is that Tottenham or Arsenal?
I think both those clubs would have similar sort of figures that their foundations do.
Yeah.
Slightly different structures, because actually Arsenal's is the own. I think Arsenal and Aston Villa are the two clubs which haven't organised separate charitable foundations. They're still part of the club, although they do rely on, you know, when they're talking about the amount of money, which is the equivalent money, it is also coming in from government schemes, and the Premier League, their Kicks Foundation, they're taking part in that.
Should we say something about grassroots football? How much they're struggling, people playing local parks and all those clubs.
Well, I guess
it's all going to the top.
Yeah, there is overall in the Premier League. Obviously, there's, as everybody knows, a lot of money coming in, but still, grassroots football, park pitches. You know, we know it from our kids and games being cancelled recently because of a lack of investment in football pitches at a lower level. So you see a lot of money coming into the Premier League at the highest level, and again, the idea of it trickling down, trickle down economics, it doesn't trickle down very far. And it's people at the bottom who are paying trickle up economics.
I'm not going to say who to vote for, even though I didn't make a reference to the one-party state of Harrogate. But what you should do, is ask the candidates, will in the future they be honest about their hospitality? Will they declare all of the hospitality, not what's above £25 or £50? Or will they refuse to go on developer-sponsored jollies to the south of France, to the MIPIM conference? Because that has been one of the little side stories of the developers taking over of Tottenham, is the number of councillors who've had trips to the Spurs, no offence Dave, to the Spurs boardroom probably for a better lunch than maybe you got. If you
We didn't
got
get any lunch.
even if you got any tea or biscuits. These people have certainly had lunch. Claire Cobra had a gift of a child's sports strip. Alan Strickland, the member for Regeneration Housing and something else, regulation, of course. What did he get? Oh, he got a trip to see NFL, Gridiron, American football at Wembley, because of course it was important for him to be able to tell us via Twitter just how fantastic it would be when American football comes to White Hart Lane. And of course both Cobra, Strickland and a number of other people have taken money from developers, including Spurs sponsorship money, to go to MIPIM, to the south of France in Cannes, for the MIPIM Developers Conference thing. So one of the key things is ask them, will you please show some integrity if elected? You know, and if you are going to meet with developers, why does it have to involve lunch? Why does it have to involve dinner? Why can't it just involve, water, like we've got at the front here? And that's the key thing about the new style, hopefully, of Harrogate politics, is that the people will have hopefully learnt the lesson of what has happened to the people before them, but obviously show some greater integrity and not pretend, as they said to me when I challenged them on taking money from people like Spurs to go to the south of France, and then actually giving planning permissions and giving large amounts of public money to them to repair the roads that they've damaged and the rest of it. And they said, oh, Martin, he said, this is where I need clever people like Mark to be involved to help me explain this. He said, the difference is, let me get it right, we go to MIPIM as the landowning authority. When we sit down here in Harringay and discuss planning matters, we're the planning authority. And that's a big difference. I thought, I really do need somebody clever to explain that to me.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm a Spurs fan. I've been going since October 1969, and have I missed many games since then? Very few. I think the new ground is brilliant. It's brilliant for the club, it's brilliant for the area, and I'm really excited to be going next season, and it will propel Tottenham even further into competing in the Champions League and being the winning club I want to support. So perhaps I'm at the wrong meeting. I bought your book anyway because I'm interested in all points of view. Of course, councils are incompetent, corrupt and useless, but as far as Tottenham Ground is concerned, I think it's a great thing for the club, for the area, and I hope it's going to bring us greater success. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks very much for coming along. I mean, I had tried to engage with a few Spurs supporters and even offered to attend at a sports trust meeting. But I was told that, which I understand, maybe there's other things that people have got on their mind, such as securing seats in the new stadium and things. But it's good to have somebody like yourself along here.
I would imagine the Trust would be very happy to chat to you because Martin Cloak, who's the chairman, is a friend of mine, has extremely left-wing views of everything and would be sympathetic, I'm sure, to your viewpoint. So.
Yeah, I have spoken directly with Martin.
Yeah.
I think it's probably just, it's relatively low down the agenda, I think.
Sure.
No, we had a joint meeting with the Supporters Trust in the sports centre opposite the football ground, and it was a good constructive meeting. I think they had 3 or 4 of the Supporters Trust and 3 or 4 of us from out Tottenham. But they're in a, as I said before, difficult position because they're trying to get more influence with the Spurs hierarchy, who had to some extent frozen them out. But seem to have cozied up to them a bit more recently, and I think the fact that we exist and we'd had a meeting with the Supporters Trust, the Spurs obviously realised, we ought to be actually in better relations with our own Supporters Trust, or they're going to turn on us. So, but yeah, obviously supporters are just ordinary people like us, and anything we can do to work with, the supporters of Tottenham, wherever they're from, because also they're going to have their own issues wherever they live. Not so many people probably from Tottenham can afford to buy tickets anymore at the ground, but wherever people live, there's going to be similar issues of having to defend our public facilities, our green spaces, stand up for our communities, and so on. So, yeah.
Yeah, when I had to live near Arsenal And I don't want to take any sort of like, football banter type position on it, but I know because the residents of the area around Arsenal were actually very upset with Arsenal because they broke many of their planning promises about underground parking, about replacing Holloway. And I don't think Tottenham have done that yet. Perhaps they will in the future, but I think if you talk to the residents around Arsenal, they may regard the stadium as a good thing overall, but they certainly feel let down by the club, I believe.
Any more questions?
Sorry, can I come back to something?
No, just
Yeah.
this lady hasn't.
Yeah, I'm a Harry Gay activist against the HGV. Haven't been directly involved with Tottenham, but it's very interesting. I wanted to ask a question. One question is about whether the walkway is still going to happen. I'm not clear whether that's been. And also, I forgot what you said when in my head and went out the other end. The national organisation. I was only thinking yesterday. I've been watching a film on social housing, social cleansing on the BBC, which I recorded. I watched that yesterday, and very, very good film. And the thing that crossed my mind really was this is going on all over the country. Big business is very, very powerful. And what we desperately really need is that we know what's going on elsewhere, and that people can, if needed, we can go and support other people, and they support us, and so on. I mean, that we really need to all know what's going on, so that big business can't do Trojan horses without people knowing. People will know in the future. So that's the other thing. I think that's really important.
John, did a bit on the walkway. I assume the walkway is happening because the very latest Haringey press release had the super picture of this super walkway with the new facilities in it, including a public square. I think that was the only thing Dave and I got excited about, was it creating a place where we could probably gather for dissent, a new public square at Spurs. But it certainly will happen. You remember, of course, there's already a walkway between White Hart Lane Station and the High Road. It's called White Hart Lane, but there's also a Whitehall Street as well. So there's a number of routes through. What, of course, I think the idea of the walkway is, you go straight from the new station, which is further south than the existing one, with a new glass frontage all along there, currently being built, and then you'll be able to sweep straight down past the climbing frames, having gathered for some pre-match entertainment maybe in the square, and all of the chains along the side and all the rest of it, no doubt banners across and all the rest of it. So there's still that existing sort of plan, and I can tell you is only last week, Lendlease, who are the preferred developer on the redevelopment of the Love Lane estate, codenamed Highway West scheme. I've been out there leafleting, telling people that they're the people that are going to be deciding their destinies, and already talking about various master planning consultation events, all sorts of activities building up towards a planning application some point later in the year. The book has the details that all of that area is under a demolition notice, under a 7-year demolition notice, so the people do know, the shops are aware in that sort of sense. But Lendlease, in their greater ambition, of course, didn't just deliver their leaflet, we're coming to tell you about how wonderful we're going to make your houses in this new walkway. They decided to deliver it to the other side of the new stadium, on the Northumberland Park estate, which of course is where they were rebuffed in terms of getting their development vehicle sort of permission sort of rights. So you can certainly see they've got ambitions not just to have a walkway from Spurs Stadium to White Hart Lane, whatever that's called when it's actually built, but also the other way, down from the stadium towards Northumberland Park. So as far as they're concerned, yes, it is one of the many things that they try to tell you is going to be brilliant about the new landscape. And I mean, the facilities at the ground are obviously going to be first class, there's no doubt about that. And there's going to be some fantastic entertainment. And for those of us living in it, we might have to experience this every day a year entertainment aspects in terms of the stuff. But there's certainly the walkway, I think, that is the sort of thing they want. They want to create that shopping centre, really. It's like a 1960s shopping mall precinct, as far as I'm concerned, but it's one of their ambitions.
Okay, did you have one last?
No, the there were very happy days at Spurs when at the 517 club, whenever Spurs lost, they came and drunk themselves senseless out of sheer merriment for the power of the opposition. I just wonder but Spurs management replied with that by putting up the prices. I wonder with the success of Spurs at the moment, they're actually putting down the prices.
No, I think the new season ticket prices, there are complaints from existing season ticket holders about the cost of the new season tickets. So
I used to joke that it was cheaper to go and watch the Cameroons than it was to go to Spurs.
Okay, on that, we'll probably close it.
Okay, thanks very much.
To Dave and Martin for their time, and thanks very much to Housmans for hosting. There's lots of cake at the back, which we don't want to take home, so please do help yourself to cake. And if you haven't got a book, please buy one on the way out. Thank you.
So you had to make